I'm Randy Wilburn, Director of Education at Zweig Group. Welcome to our online ZLearning course, How You Can Be a Better Financial Manager, Managing Cash Flow and Proactive Financial Management. This 1-hour continuing education program will help you to develop and strengthen your financial and accounting skills. You may not end up taking over for your CFO or controller, but you will be able to have a conversation with them and begin to understand what they are talking about and how it relates to the projects that you are working on or managing. Our guest today is Robert McCauley, a consultant here at Zweig Group and a financial and accounting specialist, and Zweig Group's own Claire Kiser, our Director of Consulting. We've come up with a range of simple ideas and themes to help you make sense of the numbers, whether you are trying to manage cash flow, need to establish a collection policy, or you just want to learn some of the benefits of proactive financial management. I know I certainly do. You're watching the right video. This is the third and final installment of the Financial Management for the Design Industry series. Hey, Robert and Claire, thanks for joining us today.
Wow.
Hey, Randy, good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Now, to finish this series strong, let's walk step by step through properly managing cash flow, making sure that we get paid as a firm, proactive financial management, and how to set standards and track firm performance over time. I know that this sounds like a lot, but I know you guys have some really good information and ideas on how to deal with these subjects that our audience of engineers and architects can sink their teeth into. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Good. All right, so Robert and Jamie, let's start off talking about the importance of managing cash flow. We always hear people say that you have to have cash flow to make a business work.
This is true, and one of the things kind of I've noticed being in my position at Zweig Group is that most of the architecture, engineering, and construction firms that we work with really only keep up with their income statement balance sheet. And so when you think about financial statements, it's not just the income statement and balance sheet. You've got the cash flow statement as well, which is just as important as the other two, because you're not going to be able to pay your operating expenses, pay your employees without cash. Unfortunately, you can't pay them with AR.
Right.
And so that's something you have to consider just as much as your income statement and balance sheet when you're talking about your financial statements.
That's a really important point, and it's true too. We look at hundreds and hundreds of financial statements every year from companies, and I would say almost never receive a statement of cash flow when we request standard financial information on the companies that we're looking at. It's not something that is top of mind. If we request financial statements, we generally see an income statement and a balance sheet. But do you want to say what's on a cash flow statement and how that's different from an income statement?
Yeah, so on the cash flow statement, you're going to have, it's a little similar to a cash basis income statement, except for it's pretty much month by month the schedule is, and it talks about cash going out of your business and cash coming in. And it's broken out in the operating section, the financing section, and the investing section. And so with kind of smaller businesses in the business we work, we're not going to see too much in the financing section. It'll be more line of credit, and if you have any loans, and then investing is going to be more assets and like the capital assets you've invested in, and so machinery. And then operating is going to be building,
right? Okay.
That you own, but then operating is pretty much everything else, and so you keep control, or you get a clear picture of what cash is going out and what cash is coming in on a month by month, quarter by quarter basis.
So an example of that is if you see financing from owners, that wouldn't be reported as income,
Right.
but it is cash that's injected into the company to make sure it can meet its obligations.
Okay.
And on the expense side too, like Robert's saying, a debt service, principal balance of a loan isn't something that you'll see on an income statement
Okay.
as an operating expense. That's generally what you'll see there.
So when you go into, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, Jamie Claire, is because for some people, this will be really interesting to them when you deal with some of the M&A consulting work that you do, and firms are looking at the health of a company. They want to kind of focus on the cash flow statement just to see what's going on.
Yes, one of the first questions that you should be asking is this company undercapitalized or overcapitalized? And just want to look at the sources and uses of their cash and see what they're drawing on their line of credit to fund things. You know, if they keep enough in their company to meet their expenses, or if they have to rely on financing in order to continue operations.
And usually things like the vacation home or the extra jag or whatever that might just be on there that the owner has, or the wife's whatever, that ends up being on there. You end up seeing that on this statement somewhere, right? At least you would hope.
Yeah, maybe. They'd probably be on the balance sheet, actually, is where we've seen them.
Yeah.
We shouldn't see them.
We
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's a
see
wrong
them.
answer. Yeah.
But you do see them, though.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
the thing. I was kind of being funny, but I wasn't, because I know that does come up.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to see that kind of information.
And what I was just going to say is the cash flow statement is the cash part of the balance sheet kind of dialed in and kind of a running record of that part of the balance sheet. And so they say cash is king, and so that's kind of why that's the one that's focused on, because that's what pays people, that's what pays suppliers, that's what pays lenders back. That's our currency, and so that's why it's dialed in and focused on into its own statement.
All right. So why don't we dig just a little bit deeper here to discuss some of the nuances of cash flow, like positive cash flow and negative cash flow, and the fact that profits don't automatically equal cash flow. You know, I know people hear all the time, oh, if we're making a profit, then we're making money, period. But that statement couldn't be further from the truth, right? What would you say, Robert?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it could be true if you're being paid in only cash, but how likely is that? How common is that? It's not very likely.
Yeah.
But no, positive cash flow simply is cash coming into your business. Negative cash flow is going out. And so obviously you want a net positive cash flow for each month, quarter, whichever period your business is running on. And then, yeah, like you said, you're not going to, profit does not equal cash flow. Profit does not equal cash. You could have revenues, expenses, and all your revenues are, say, year-long projects, and all of it, because your policy is in accounts receivable. So you really don't have any cash right now. So if you're paid you pay your employees every 2 weeks, you can't pay them. You can't pay them this 2 weeks. I mean, cash on hand.
Right.
And so there are short-term ways to fix kind of cash flow problems, and then there are long-term ways to fix it. And I guess we'll go into this a little bit later in the segment.
Okay. All right. Did you want to chime in as well on that, Jamie Claire?
No, that's exactly right, and that's really where it ties into project managers too. This isn't just a CFO level discussion. What Robert's saying is we have to get paid on the work that we're doing and the invoices we're sending out. Yeah. That's where it ties back to the project managers and making sure that the things that we're doing, investing in, whether it's training or buying new computers or whatever it is, lines up with our income stream too. Yeah. We actually have to convert that cash all the way through the cycle, from sending the contract out, getting it signed, to getting it in the bank after the project's going.
Yeah, I think, project managers, and especially those of you that are watching this, you can't turn a blind eye to this.
Right.
I mean, you've got to stay on it, and you have to treat even your project as a mini business within a business.
Absolutely.
And take care of it from that perspective, which I think is really helpful.
Project managers have got to see themselves as financial managers. They're dealing with resources of their company and also of their client's company. By definition, I think a project manager is a financial manager.
Well, I mean, that right there, folks, is the essence of why we were even doing this video. Any of these financial management for non-financial manager videos, we want you to have the training and the understanding of the importance of dealing with the financial numbers, even if you didn't take an accounting class in your engineering or architectural program in college. It just, you can still get the information and the knowledge and the wherewithal to have a semblance of understanding of what to do in order to avoid running into problems with your organization. So, all right. So, Jamie, Claire, since profits don't equal cash flow automatically, I imagine that there is a lot that firms can do to speed up their receivables and collect money owed to them faster. I know we talked about it, we've danced around the subject a little bit, but let's get a little deeper into this area about getting paid and how we deal with that on a regular basis and getting paid even faster.
I'd love to dig a little deeper into that. In fact, a lot deeper. So let me just pull this soapbox out and climb up on it. It's all going downhill from here, folks.
Right.
That's the reason it's called ZLearning.
Yes.
Put you right to sleep. I think that companies need to have a true collection policy. I'd like to start with that.
Okay.
So I think it is extremely important to set the standards for how we expect to be paid. It's not, yes, we can say you just need to get paid faster.
Yep.
But what does that mean? Faster than what? What are the standards that we've set for this company for how we expect to be paid? And most importantly, have we communicated those to the client? Is the client aware of what we're expecting?
Right.
Have we had that discussion with them?
Okay.
So some of the things that we can do really start at home. We discussed in the last segment, the average collection period in this industry was 77 days?
77 days, yeah.
Plus the average WIP.
WIP is 17.
So that's how it takes you 17 days just to get the invoice out to the client. Once the invoice is out and it's gone to WIP, there's an additional 77 days until we actually get that money in our bank account. That bears repeating because that is a very long time. We are not necessarily in the architecture engineering business in this industry. We're financing projects.
Yeah.
I mean, and the less attention we pay to making sure that we ourselves collect the money that we're owed, the more we're heavily into that financing business. That is just an incredible duration of time as a professional.
Well, yeah, and I mean the bottom line, and I know we use an example in one of our PM trainings that a $10 million business has about a $27,400 a day operating budget. And for every day that you're not getting paid, that's the kind of money that you're missing out on, essentially,
yes,
over time. So you're carrying a very heavy load in an entity, in an organization that's not necessarily built to carry that type of financial load.
Right.
So, I mean, it's huge.
The problem's really exacerbated too. Right now the industry is going through so much growth.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging when you're growing to not be able to invest those resources into your company. It's always very challenging, but
right,
it's exacerbated when you need to make investments that are outpacing the revenue that you have. You've won a new project, you've got a huge backlog. What do you need to do to be able to deliver this? You need to make some hires, you need to upgrade some software. But if we haven't even started on the project and we haven't been paid for the last thing that we've been working on for this long, you can see how that time crunch can really happen. Or when do we hire that new person to come in and help us? Those are important investments that not having our own money in the bank can make us delay out of necessity.
Yeah, and I mean, especially if you're a firm that doesn't have huge cash reserves, you're going to have to tap a line of credit or something in order to be able to sustain yourself through those periods of non-collection or the delays that just inevitably come up.
Yes.
So, well, let's discuss, and you mentioned a couple of things really interesting earlier. You mentioned some unique ways to collect receivables in an efficient manner. I think you talked about a lockbox. It was kind of like the idea of having one central location where all of your checks came in, and you said it makes things a little bit more efficient to centralize your banking at one bank. And I know you worked at a bank previously, so you've had some experience in that area. Asking clients to make deposit payments at a time the proposal's accepted, tracking AR, etc. Can you kind of just go into some of these different manners and maybe some of your preferences when it comes to this? Because I know you give people recommendations about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to having a strong collection policy,
right,
one of the other things too that I want to talk about is figuring out who should be the one handling the money side of the relationship. I would say most firms have the project manager be the first line of collections on the other side. We were talking about this yesterday when we were kind of discussing some of the things that we see all the time, outside of like curriculum. In the real world,
right,
what do we see when we're talking to companies? And this was something that we see all the time, is that we set up companies and have the project manager, so the architect, engineer, surveyor, planner, whatever it is,
right,
be the person whose job it is to collect the receivables from their client, who they're also trying to deliver exceptional service to and say that we're experts and that, we're very valuable and all of that.
Right.
And you just have to question whether that's the best use of your project manager's time. And we were discussing yesterday that the core competency of somebody in accounting whose job it is to collect AR is to collect AR. Do we have the right person talking to the right person on the other side of the table about collections?
Yeah.
Our best practice recommendation is at the outset, you have accounting talking to accounting. Your collection policy is such that for the majority of the collection cycle, ideally the entire thing, the project manager isn't even involved.
Okay.
That accounting talks to accounting, make sure that the invoice was received. Before the invoice goes out, they confirm the right format. They confirm they have the right person, the right day, so that once their invoice gets submitted, it's likely to get paid faster.
Right.
What their cutoff is for processing payables. And having them talk to each other so that the project manager can focus on what they do best, what their core competency is, which is delivering a project. It's not collection of AR. It's very hard to expect a project manager to see that as their core duty. It's never going to be. That's not what they do all day long. I think the investment of bringing in somebody to manage the receivable process and free your project managers up to their highest and best use is a really good use of firm resources. And having that project manager as an escalation in the collection policy. So not the first person that we're going to talk to about getting paid, but the second, project manager to project manager, hey, we got a problem. Don't bring them in until later. Let them focus on doing what they do best.
Yeah, and I know even for us at Zweig Group, we kind of follow this process, and we allow our accounting department to handle things. And then every now and then, and I would say maybe only once or twice a year, do I ever get asked by accounting, hey, would you mind giving the client a call and just a gentle nudge and find out what's going on? And usually it's something simple, an oversight or whatever, but it is helpful for us to step in. I know also that you recommend if there is a PIC or a principal in charge, where would they get involved with this?
Later on in the process, right? Okay. So actually, to touch on in our company, I would say that the most common thing that happens when I, as the project manager, you probably too, when we have to when our accounting team says, hey, will you check in and see this invoice hasn't been paid? Right. And I'll say, well, who did you send it to? And I'll look, and I'm like, oh, Sally, she left the company. No wonder we haven't gotten paid.
Exactly.
It's a communication issue. And so now we've prevented this from accounting now angry that we haven't been paid in 6 months. Yeah. Not that our accounting team is ever angry. They're about the nicest people on the planet.
Right.
Foot and mouth here, sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But instead of them calling and saying, you have been ignoring us, now it's an information. Yeah. It's an informational discussion of, I should have been on top of this, and I should have let you know that Sally left, and now you need to send invoices to this other person.
Yeah.
So much simpler and so positively charged rather than coming in swinging and saying, why haven't you paid us?
Yeah.
But most of the time it's something that simple,
Yeah. And I even like the fact, and I know, and just to kind of give a little bit of the inner workings of Zweig, and I know it's just a popular thing to do, but I like the fact that we have those forms that we use when we initially get a project. What we do is we fill out all the basic information about who should be billed for certain things, who should be communicated with, their address. I mean, you don't want to just hand the accounting department a business card and say, here you go, this is Bob's card, just send him a bill when the time comes. You don't want to do that. Yeah. And the other thing that I will say that we do, which I've always thought has been smart, and we've been doing this since day one, is that we put every way that you can pay us on the form.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to pay by credit card, that's an option. If you want to pay by wire, our wire instructions are right on the invoice. I mean, we make it abundantly clear. Yes. And I've seen some other firms do that, but not too often in the design space. And I know that you've made recommendations to a lot of firms to kind of bolster their invoicing process and improve in this area, because it probably can help to start shrinking some of those AR days for them. So,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Make it as easy as possible to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, cool. So, what are your thoughts, and I know you have many, on extending credit to clients and how design firms should go about this? Because we talked about it earlier. We talked about the importance of being able to manage your cash flow properly, and then there are times when firms run into issues and maybe they don't have quite the cash flow that they need because their ARs haven't been paid. What are your thoughts on extending credit to clients, and how should design firms go about this?
Yeah, I think one of the main things as far as extending credit to clients is you've got to do your research and do kind of somewhat of a credit background check before you get in bed with your clients, with each individual client. And so that's going to help first of all, that's going to help you understand who your client is, as well as if you're going to be willing to add that to the relationship once it comes time to talk about payment terms. I know Jamie Claire is quite an advocate of doing discounted payment terms, like paying within 30 days or paying within 10 days and having a little bit of a discount. And strangely enough, that's not something that we see too often in this industry that we could use a little bit more of.
What would you call that? Creative financing?
Creative financing.
So.
Incentivizing to get incentivizing. Yeah.
Yes. And going back to your first point too, I think a lot of people don't realize that businesses have credit scores just like people.
Right.
You know your credit score matters when you go to apply for a loan or get a new phone. They'll pull your credit sometimes.
Right.
Whatever it is. Businesses have them too.
Yeah.
They're not often that helpful, to be honest, but I think as part of your standard new client protocol, this is something you should absolutely do, because while they're not that helpful, what they will tell you is negative payment history. So they'll tell you if somebody's had to file a lien before, if an architecture engineering firm, a consultant like yourself, has ever had to file a lawsuit against them.
Yep.
That's something you should know.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't do anything different with them in terms of not taking the project, but maybe you do require them to make that deposit up front.
Yeah.
Maybe we do identify them as higher risk, so we're going to talk to them more about our collection policy. Whatever the protocol is, I think it's important to have that, but have it with the context of looking them up first. It's inexpensive and it can give you that peace of mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously there's so many things that you can do. Any last second ideas that you have about dealing with credit risk management as far as that's concerned with firms that you've run across since you've been in the design space? Because I know you have the unique experience of being on both sides of the table. You've worked at a bank and you've operated from that perspective, and so you've seen what a bank requires.
Right.
What have you noticed now that you've been over on the design space side for several years now, in terms of some of the challenges that firms in our space deal with that they could easily overcome?
The biggest challenge is dealing with bankers who don't understand this industry, and kind of the same non-confrontational approach with collections that's a problem.
Yeah.
It's the same with seeking financing too. So when I say that, I mean that banks often have standard terms that they'll apply. So I recommend that every company has a line of credit in place. It's cheap to get. It's a couple $1,000s truly to put into place. The interest is very low and it gives you that peace of mind. The mistake, though, is that most companies will accept the bank's standard policy. So there's a certain risk factor applied to older receivables. 120 days usually is a total write-off. A bank will not advance your line of credit for receivables over 120 days. Some more conservative banks will make that 90 days. What the banks don't know when they apply their standard procedures is that the average collection period in this industry is just about 80 days. So you've got 10 days there if your bank is using 90 days to get paid, beyond average.
Yeah.
I think that the mistake that we make in this industry is not educating people about how we work.
Right.
I think if you went into your bank and said, yes, I understand your policy is to start discounting at 90 days, are you aware that our average collection period in this industry is 77 days? Here it is, slide the page over from Zweig Group survey, and say this is what the average is in this industry. I need you to bump that up in order to accommodate our business.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask those questions. I will say that I have not worked with anybody in banking who would have been anything other than surprised to be informed of that.
Right.
There's no negative reaction to learning something new.
Right.
People just don't know that. They don't know how the industry operates.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to see our job to explain how we work to other people as a really important part of our own financial management of ourselves as a company.
Yeah, and I think and that's very telling too, because I think you don't want to have you don't want the cookie cutter approach to be applied to your business and how you do things in the design space, because it's different than a mom and pop grocery shop or a cookie company, or I don't know why I keep mentioning food, maybe I'm hungry, but the bottom line is you get all these ideas that, we do things a little differently. And whether it's in a hate for the shameless plug of Zweig material and surveys, but we have a lot of survey material that provides that kind of substantive information that you can then take to a lender at a bank and say, here you go.
Right.
And here's what the industry norms are, and here's where we are. And especially for a lot of firms that have been around for years, sometimes you run into tough times, or you run into some challenges or cash crunches, and I think it's just important to be able to position yourself to be successful. And
yes, and even beyond using Zweig Group data too, I would say if you are an established company with years of data, show the bank what your average collection period trend has been over the last 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and say, so the data is supported by the industry, but also in our company, which has been around for this many years, our average is this many days.
Right.
Again, just more evidence for why the standard doesn't really apply, why the cookies should crumble.
Should crumble, yeah. Okay, so that's a good one. So let's talk a little bit more as we move this conversation along. We've talked some about credit and about making sure that you're getting your money collected a little bit faster. Are there any other ways to increase cash flow? Like increase sales? You mentioned pricing discounts, short-term financing, delaying payables. What options are on the table for a growing design firm? And either one of you can take that.
Yeah, I guess I'll start off with also mentioning that the solution to cash flow problems is not growth. That's something that's kind of common. A common thought among those struggling with cash flow is like, okay, we don't have cash, let's grow more and spend more on maybe business development or try to grow a business more. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're improving your cash flow, because with that growth, you're going to have more cash flow problems, because you're probably going to have more accounts receivable and more collections to deal with. And so that's not necessarily improving your cash flow.
That's really important. That is extremely important to point out too, because it's the strains that are already there.
Right.
That 77-day average collection period doesn't magically go away because you now have even more to collect from more people. Mm-hmm. That's a really important point too, that we think we can outgrow these challenges. There is no way to get around needing to have a robust collection policy. That's a really important point.
Yeah. Yeah.
More money, more problems, I believe the proverb goes.
More money, more problems. That's right. More receivables, more problems.
Yeah, so robust collection procedures. Okay.
So I guess there's a few different ways to kind of, in the short term, manage cash flow. And I know some of that would include kind of selling off old assets and getting cash that way if you've got stuff lying around. If you have, we're gonna have to stop. I'm blanking.
I've got some.
Okay, that's fine.
We're gonna send it to Jamie Claire.
But wait, there's more. I think that we are very, very debt averse in this industry.
Sure.
So just with the line of credit that so many companies have, it's such common sense when I say it, right? But you'd be surprised at how many companies do not even have a line of credit in place. So getting that in place before you need it is the key.
Yeah.
Get it in place before you're going to need to draw on it. That's really important. But also don't stop there. Finance what you need to finance. Don't feel like you need to pay in cash for everything.
Right.
So many companies in this industry feel like debt is a very bad word.
Yeah.
It's not. It is another tool to facilitate growth and to spread out those payments over time. That's an easy way to have more money in your pocket and still have the asset that you need to grow.
Yeah.
Also renegotiating expenses often. When was the last time we priced our insurance? I can't tell you the number of firms I work with that have gone to the same insurance provider for, they'll say 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is, without bidding it out ever.
Yeah.
You may be getting absolutely exactly what you need at a competitive price, but I think part of the job is to understand what else we could be getting, what else is out there.
Yeah. And then another way is kind of secondary sales or incremental sales to current clients, whether that be kind of some materials that you sell or some products that you sell, and just be like, and kind of pushing those onto them, maybe asking for their help for this quarter is, depending on how your relationship is with them, they may be able to help you kind of improve your cash flow depending on how your relationship is.
Okay.
We don't look at things as we look at it as extra service. We were talking about change orders in the last piece. What does that little bit of incremental revenue on the project get us?
Yeah.
It's a lot. It really does add up.
Yeah.
Are we marking up things that we can mark up? Are we working with our brains in order to get paid? Is really, I think, what you're.
Yeah, and you need to make sure that you're getting paid in cash for these incremental sales as well.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's not going to help your cash flow.
Yeah, right. So that means credit card or obviously a cash or check, obviously.
Right.
So, yeah, although I've never had anybody give me cash for any services that I've offered at Zweig, so. But we've had credit cards, which is okay, so. All right. So now that we have a better handle on cash flow and all the moving parts that go along with it, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this in future segments that we do on financial management, because there's still so much. We're really just scratching the surface here. Let's talk a little bit about how to proactively collect payments. And we've alluded to it. We've talked about it a little bit earlier. I know a lot of firms in this industry don't have a set collection process or policy, and you guys think that is a mistake, right?
Correct. Yeah, we can just jump right in unless you've got.
Why don't you? So
White knuckle over here, Randy. I'm too excited to talk about
I know you are. So Robert, let's start. Robert, why don't you walk us through the components of a good collection policy for our audience benefit? We will include an example of a collection policy in the PDF workbook that comes along with this video. And by the way, we have an amazing workbook that will answer a lot of your questions, will provide a lot of the definitions that we discuss in this and other financial management videos that I think you'll find really helpful. So, and a lot of that information comes from the knowledge that Jamie Claire and Robert have, and Mark Zweig and Chad Klein. And so there's so much great information in there that will help you make sense of all this and really gel things together. But Robert, why don't you walk us through the components of a good collection policy?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is for there to be a collection policy at play here, because like you just said, a lot of companies we work with in this industry don't necessarily have collection policies. They kind of just don't have one. They go by the skin of their teeth as it regards to collections, and so it's important to have that policy. And then it's also important to communicate that policy to your clients from the beginning of the project.
Sure.
We've talked about communication understanding quite a bit over these last few segments, but that's a big part of it. Whether you do discount terms is up to your company. It works in many other industries, and so that's something that you could say, if you pay 10 days or less, 30 days or less, we'll give you a little bit of a discount. And then also, it's important to schedule out when the billings are going to go out, or if you're going to demand some up front as part of your policy. And that's something that Jamie Claire can go into a little bit more detail in, as she is kind of the one who makes the policy for some of our clients.
Yeah.
And so you hear it from her mouth.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't you share?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about getting paid up front, and that might be a policy for new clients. It might be a policy for projects under a certain size. There's different parameters you can consider it on, but I wouldn't write it off completely, which is the norm in this industry. Most people do not ask for deposits. Again, anything we can do to get paid back. I know, it is so surprising. It is absolutely surprising.
Because we don't start work without taking a deposit. So, and it's like, I'm always amazed when we go in and visit firms or do strategic plans, and we look at how they structure their proposals and everything, and I'm like, well, when do you get paid?
Yeah.
Oh, that's down the road. I'm like, down the road?
Yes.
This is not a charity, folks.
The give and take isn't totally aligned in this industry, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it surprises me too. I would also say, not only is it important to have a collection policy, the resistance that we get is people don't want to bring something new out and scare off their great clients that they already have. Mm-hmm. First of all, I would like to say that a great client isn't one that you would have to enforce a collection policy with.
Right.
Your great client criteria has got to include getting paid on time.
Yeah.
You're not a great client if you're not paying us on time without a huge struggle, in order to get that.
Right.
I'll also say that it's important to have a policy, but that doesn't mean we enforce it all the time.
Yeah.
What the communication is, from the outset, here's our policy. And then when there's a violation of it, that's when we bring it back up and say, we're actually in violation of this policy. When are you going to be able to pay us? If there is a payment that's cured, thank you for making that payment. We're going to avoid collection of the escalation of this policy. We're going to not enforce it, even though we could. You're such a great client. We've known you for so long. We just want you to know that this is our policy, but we're not going to enforce it for you.
Right.
So now what we've done is make the client feel special. They're an exception to the norm because we trust them so much. And if anything works on me, it's guilt.
Yeah.
That guilt is going to be well-founded. You are about to get paid. That cash
Right.
payment you were talking about, I'm about to make it. It's going to happen.
Exactly.
Don't make me feel like that. I'm on your team.
Yeah.
Because I'm a great client. That is part of the great client criteria. I also think a mistake we make is not invoicing our receivables and our project billing, our normal project billing, and our reimbursable expenses separately.
Yeah.
A lot of companies will put those on the same invoice.
Okay.
And I can't tell you, when I bring this up in seminars, people will sit there and kind of, okay, now what? And then I'm saying, well, how often have you had it where a large invoice that the client's not even talking about or disputing gets held up because of a small, meal or something like that on your expenses? It happens so much more often, I think, than you realize. Put them on separate invoices. If there's no problem with the project installment that's due, fantastic. You'll get paid faster on the bigger side. We'll debate whether I could have stayed at the Super 8 motel down the street instead later.
I know.
But don't hold up the big invoice payment.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, that Mark Zweig really advocates is don't put an AR aging statement on your invoices.
Okay.
If you have that, this is where we are at 0 to 30, this is where we are at 30 to 60, and then there's a huge amount in the 90 and above on the invoice, the brand new invoice you're sending out. What you're communicating to your client with that invoice is, don't worry about paying us till at least 90 days. Because we are obviously happy to finance that. We find you equally creditworthy at this point.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's all due. Damn it. Can I say that?
Yes. It's fine. It's fine.
It's all due. I mean, put what is due at this point on the invoice. Send out a separate collection notice.
Yeah.
And we have a client that has started mailing the collection notices. They'll stamp on red, past due. Whatever you can do to get that noticed and say, you owe us money, guys. We are not your bank.
Yeah. I mean, and this I think lines up with this. I've said it before. I've even said it in some of these ZLearning videos. A closed mouth never gets fed. If you don't open your mouth and ask for something, you'll never get it. And if you don't ask for the money that you're actually owed, you definitely won't get it. Or at least you will, but you won't get it when you need it. So I think it's important to remember.
Your clients are certainly not going to be more encouraged to pay you than you are to get paid.
Right.
How about that? Yeah,
it's exactly said. So that's awesome. Well, that's extremely valuable information. I do want to remind you that the collections policy sample that we put together is in this PDF that comes along with the workbook for this particular video, and we certainly encourage you to check it out and take a closer look at it when you get a chance. This is a lot of information that you guys have given us, and I want to figure out how we can land this plane today. I know that you both want to spend some time talking about proactive financial management and how project managers can do some simple things to keep their eye on the finances of their projects and correspondingly the firm's finances. So I don't know, Jamie, Claire, if you want to respond to this and talk about that just a little bit.
I think as a project manager, a lot of the things that we've discussed in this series are big concepts that are new and unfamiliar. But I'll say that I would like the mindset to shift in this industry from we are a service provider to we are a professional, just like the person on the other side of the table. Mm-hmm. We are at equal level, and what you were demanding of me, I have some demands too, and getting paid is one of those core demands. I think that there's a real reluctance to speak up, and we feel kind of beaten down in this industry, and like we get paid when the client gets around to it. What we do is the project side. Yeah. Elevate yourself a little bit higher in that, and see yourself talking professional to professional too. Right. Yes, you do have a client to serve, and yes, they're the boss on this, but you also have your own interests, and you are also, like you said earlier, running this project like it's a mini company. Right. It is important that you see that as your job too. Right. That proactive financial management and speaking up, advocating for yourself and your firm never looks bad. It looks like you care. Yeah. Those are the kind of people we want to work with. That's the kind of person everybody wants to work with. Somebody who actually cares about the bigger picture.
All right, Jamie, Claire, that was great. That really drives it home for us. Robert, do you have anything that you want to add from that perspective, knowing what you know as an accountant with the financial background and experience that you have? What little simple piece of advice would you want to share with a project manager from a proactive financial management perspective?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that receiving the cash and getting paid is part of the project, and you're not being the bad guy by requesting payment or just making sure that you're getting paid for your job. That's part of it, and so that's kind of why we have the accounting department, because that is what they do best. We mentioned that earlier, as far as receipt or going out and collecting, and so just kind of communicating that and making that understood from the beginning. So.
Okay. Well, and it gets back to, and you bring it up, I mean, it gets back to proper communication. It gets back to early and often communicating. And, you know, there's some things that we're kind of beating a dead horse with, but it's because we want you to understand the importance of having these conversations early and often with clients and not being afraid to ask the questions when it comes to financial related issues.
Yes, and you know, part of that proactive piece too, we're talking all about, you know, getting paid, invoicing faster, collecting faster. Part of that big picture and zooming out from your project, as a project manager, you're a leader in your company. Making sure that you are doing things that are going to position the people below you for success in their careers too.
Yeah.
And an example of that just came to mind was, you know, project managers are reluctant to do field visits.
Mm-hmm.
And to get people out of the office, if they're not specifically going there, if they're not getting paid to be there, put more hours on their project
Right.
to get people out there.
Right.
And what you're doing is slowing down the development of every person that you're not putting that hour into. You know, and we're all so focused on delivering awesome projects, profitable work, and we've got our heart in the right place, but what else could we be doing with that time? Yeah, a meeting is an expensive use of an hour to get 5 people together to sit there and talk about the project overall. Yeah. We don't know what that's going to save us down the road.
Right.
Getting people out of the office, loading up, taking extra people who aren't even on the project maybe to go out and do a site visit, see how things actually look in the field. Are you going to get an immediate return for that? No, but you again don't know the stuff you're going to prevent when people actually start realizing how their designs affect the real world.
Yeah.
It's more than just the hours, the dollars, and all of that, which is probably not how you would expect this financial management course to end.
Right.
But I really feel passionately that it's a bigger picture perspective too, and understanding how the investments that we make are going to build that firm of the future for us.
Absolutely. And you bring up a great point, and we talk about this in leadership, but every project manager should be working themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
The only way that you do that is by encouraging other people that are under your charge to get out there, and you want to expose them to as much of the project as possible. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck there as a project manager for the rest of your life.
Project micromanager, even.
Exactly.
If you're not.
Yes, not even a project manager, a project micromanager. That's a title. That's a mouthful. So.
I think that's my title, probably.
Yeah. So,
stop laughing at that, Randy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't think so, but that's okay. All right. So the final thing that we want to talk about today, and it's a 2-part question, is how do we take all of this information learned on this and the other 2 videos on financial management for the design industry to set standards moving forward for firm performance, right? How do we track it over time? How do we get all this information that we've gotten and apply it to our organizations? And then how do we kind of track it to make sure that we're doing what Jamie Claire has talked about, what Robert has talked about, the few things that I've mentioned? I mean, I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm listening to you guys because you know it all. But with regard to this subject, but where do we go from here?
Yeah, I think one of the first thing you have to do is kind of go back and evaluate where those specific processes are and where you are in each of the parts of the business we mentioned over the 3 segments. And then you really need to figure out where you need to invest more in as it relates to kind of the expenses that are going to be added as part of trying to improve these processes.
Okay.
And so whether that be in accounting software or whether it be in kind of more training or kind of hiring different individuals that will help with this, you really have to figure out which one of those or if another one will help out where you are to improve that process to get where you want to be next.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot there, and I think that there's a lot of firms that are listening to this that don't have a CFO,
Right.
they don't have a controller, they probably have somebody that's doing the double duty of doing HR and accounting, and people are really stretched thin, and so it's like, well, how do I overcome that to be able to perform at the highest level from a financial management perspective and do a good service to my organization? And that's a challenge that a lot of firms are struggling with right now. So, but Jamie, Claire, you want to share some of your final thoughts on overall firm performance and how we track this thing over time?
Absolutely. I think that the real key to success is to be obsessed with the detail. I mean, this stuff will go as soon as you stop focusing on it. And I know that's the most exhausting answer I could possibly give, but the way, just going back to average collection period alone, if you are not constantly vigilant about getting paid faster and thinking about what we can do in order to speed that up, it will slow down again. We see it time after time, and we'll have a great policy, we'll roll something out, things will get really good, we'll focus on it, it'll be part of our meetings, and once things get good, it's dropped off the agenda and replaced with something else, holiday party planning.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Or something,
yeah, and we stop talking about it. This never goes away, and you can't outsource this completely.
Yeah.
Those are the two myths, I think, is once we fix it, it's fixed. It's never fixed. You've got to be obsessed with it all the time. And accounting can help us so much, but hear that I said help us so much. It's not their job and their mission in life. We have got to do what we can to help them and be partners with them in this process. It's not hiring somebody and this is just what they do now so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's still a team, and it's still something that's not going to stay where it is without a lot of effort. Okay. Sorry, that's depressing, but it's true.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and that, as you think about it, and I think it's the same way that we sometimes deal with our own personal finances and budget. You can't just set all your finances up in your budget in QuickBooks and walk away. You've got to constantly keep an eye on it. I'm always sitting around wondering, man, am I getting charged for something on my bank statement, and because I'm not reviewing it and going over it, that it just goes by and there's $2.50 out the window every month that I'm just not aware of, and then I have to go back 12 months later and correct the problem that had I stayed on top of it from the beginning, I wouldn't have had the problem. So, we deal with it in our personal lives, but also in our professional lives, and it's something that will never go away. So.
No, but you'll get to retire or die someday. So
yes, there is that. There is that. So there is something to look forward to. So
always a good time, Randy.
Man, yes, absolutely. That's a lot of great information. I think over these last few videos that we've done, these are our first foray into the financial management space. I feel like we've gotten a lot of almost a mini finance and accounting degree with this information, at least as it pertains to how design firms should deal with finance and accounting. I'm glad we recorded this so that I can personally go over this later and really study the subject further. I've done it on my own time at Zweig, but this video is going to help me even more. Robert and Jamie, you've given us a ton to think about in this final session. I'm sure there are a lot of project managers out there that appreciate this information. Do you have any final thoughts? This is the final thought to share before we close out this ZLearning session. And Robert, I'll let you go first. And then we'll let Jamie.
I mean, I think anytime you're thinking about money, you sometimes become weary because you feel like you're greedy yourself when you're trying to get money from your clients or get money from suppliers or cut corners or whatever. But that money that you're asking for, that you're collecting, is so that you can spend your money on improving on your architecture, your engineering, or improving the community in whatever way that you do, that your company does. And so it's your company's money, it's not your money. You may feel like, I'm collecting this money for me, but it really is for your company so that you can improve the community and improve whatever your job is to improve. And so it's important to kind of take a different mindset and understand that you are not being greedy by asking for or trying to collect money that is owed to you. Yeah. And so it's kind of a simple concept, but it can go a long way if you can kind of just take on that mindset.
Okay, great. And the best for last, Jamie Claire?
Oh man, I will just say that this is a lot of dense material on this topic, but you really don't need to become an expert on this to make really important incremental changes that will improve your company. I don't have an accounting degree. I don't have a finance degree. I have a history degree. I learned this stuff by the see, that's why we're so smart.
Exactly.
That's why I like historic financial statements. The numbers tell a story. And the incremental improvement makes such a big difference. And just being a competent consumer of that information and an informed participant in your company, that's the business background that you need in this industry. That's what it is. What are the numbers telling us, and what should we do next now that we see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, you couldn't have said it better. Well, there you have it, folks. Two of the best that Zweig Group has to offer have come and spent several sessions with us, sharing some amazing information on the financial and accounting aspects of a design firm, especially from the perspective of a project manager. So I really appreciate you guys coming out and joining us and sharing your expertise, and thank you so much. And we look forward to having you back here soon in the future, Jamie Claire. I know you can't wait personally, but that's a whole nother issue, folks. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching this ZLearning episode on how you can be a better financial manager, part 3, managing cash flow and proactive financial management. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, you need to check them out. Visit zweiggroup.com/ZLearning for more information on how you can order those videos today. Remember, in order to get continuing education credit, you must follow the instructions in the email that came along with this video, complete a short quiz, and a certificate will be provided to you immediately. If you'd like to share this video with your office in a lunch and learn format, you can do so easily. You only need to purchase additional quizzes for the number of people that watch the video and want to get their continuing education credit. I urge you to do it. It's a very cost-effective way to get some additional CEUs. Check your email when you order this video for additional information. You can always email us here at elearning@zweiggroup.com if you have any questions. Please email us with any feedback or thoughts too. We'd love feedback, and we especially love to hear from anyone that was impacted in a positive way by this video training. Stay tuned for our next ZLearning class coming soon. Whether you're looking for online continuing education classes in project management, business development, marketing, leadership, or financial management for AEC professionals, ZLearning has got you covered. Zweig Group's ZLearning offers fresh and relevant content that won't put you to sleep. Visit us at zweiggroup.com/ZLearning for more information. Until the next CEU, we'll see you later.